Hey, and welcome to our Kivy tutorial where we talk about formatting. In part 5 today, we talk about buttons and how you can change the background color, the font color, and how that can differ when you click or not click the button. And then we also show you how we can use your own image as a button. Check it out.
Let's start with what we have. So a basic app that has a standard button with the standard text size and the standard background color. And if I click it, it turns into the standard blue background color when clicked. Okay, so this is my standard button. First thing to do is change the font size and the font color. So that's the same as for labels. So font size we can set to 50, and font color, remember that is color, not font color, and you need an RGBA value here. So let's pick something interesting. And from what I found on the internet, I have something called Oxford Blue. That was 22, 27, and 51. And then 1 for the alpha value. And remember, for Kivy, you need to have percentages, so therefore you divide that by 255. So this gives me a blue font on a gray background. Now, the big difference between a button and a label, of course, is that a button can be clicked and then effectively does something. So if you click a label, nothing happens. If you click a button, you can see that things happen. Two things happen, or two things to notice. If you click the button, the background color changes. And if you click the button, the text color or the font color does not change. Okay, that stays the same blue color. So by default, a button will have a background color in its normal state, which is unclicked, which is now, so that's gray. And it will have a background color when clicked or pressed or when it's down, and that is some sort of light blue. But the font color does not change. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to have the font color change when clicked. So this dark blue, I will turn that into, I don't know, red, for example. Okay, so how do I do that? So I want my color to be this tuple, which is the blue. Now I want that to be the case when it is not clicked, but when it is pressed down or when it's clicked, then I want that to be, say, green or red or whatever I want it to be. So I want that to be the color if the state of my button is normal. And let me make this a little bit wider because we're not using the Python piece anyway. If not, I want it to be, let's say, red. So that's red. Okay. So what is this saying? This is an if statement. It's saying if self.state. What is self? Self is, well, I'm in button. So if the state of the button is normal, that means not clicked, then I want this color, which I chose, this dark bluish thing, I want that to be the font color. However, else, so if it's not normal, in other words, if it's being clicked, I want the color to change to red. Let's see. So the button is unclicked, so nothing happens. But if I click, you can see that the button color or the font color changes to red. Okay. Now, the next thing to do is to play with the background color. Again, the default background color when not clicked is gray, and the default color when clicked is light blue. So there are two ways of approaching the background color. To change the background color in a button, you use a property called background color. So that's easy enough. And let's pick a color here, which is, for example, red. So red, green, blue, alpha value. Okay. Now, what this does, and that is explained in the Kivy documentation, if I run this, the background color of my button will actually not be red. Let me show you what it is. it's some sort of dark red, and if I click it, it's some sort of really dark red. So what's happening? It's different from when not clicked, but it's not red. So what is happening? Kivy documentation does explain that this is a filter that is applied to the existing background colors. And this is where it's important, where I said earlier that there are two default background colors, gray when the button is not pressed, and blue or some sort of light blue when it is pressed. So what it will do is it will take those colors and apply this red filter to it, which is why you get some really dark version of red. If that's what you want to happen, if that's how you want your colors to be, then that's it. Then you have changed your background color, and you have a different color when it's pressed and a different color when it's not pressed. Now, in my case, I usually prefer to have the colors that I want specifically. I usually work with a color theme, and I want my colors of that color theme to come through. So for me to do that, I need to first switch off the default colors that are there already. So that's the gray when the button is in its normal state, and the blue when the button is not in its normal state. So to do that, there is a property called background normal, which actually, interestingly, is not an RGBA value. It's a string value and refers actually to the source file of the default color of the button. Now that's at the moment not important. We'll come back to that in a second. But if I set this to the empty string, then it loses this link to its default value, and therefore the filter, this background color filter here, will be applied to, well, nothing, and therefore it will come through in its true value. Okay, so let's see what that does. Yep, I now have a red button with this dark blue text, and if I click it, I get my red text. That's fine, but my background is still weird. It's still not red. It's some sort of dark red. Okay, that is because what we have done is we have switched off the normal background. What we have not done yet is switched off the background in this state of the button when it's pressed. So that's the next thing you can do. So to do that, there is a value called background down. It's not pressed or anything like that. It's called down. And for that, you do the same thing. You switch that off, and then this filter will be applied. This filter will be applied to, well, nothing, and therefore it will come through in its real value, which is red. So what do you get? You get your red button, and when I click it, it's red. Yes, that's what you told it to be, but so it works, but well, now my text disappears because I told my text to be red when the button was clicked. So I really want my button to have a different background when it's clicked, not red, but I don't want it to be mixed with the default value. I want it to be a specific color, let's say green. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to apply the same trick as we did up here, using an if statement. So my background color, or effectively my background filter, I want that to be red when, well, if the state of my button, so if self.state, if that equals normal, then I want that to be red. If not, I want it to be green, so red, RGB, green, blue, white. So now, unpressed, I've got a red background and my blue text. If I click it, ooh, I get an error. Sorry, that's because this needs to be a tuple. Apologies, run that again. So red in its normal state with blue background. If I click it, I get a green background and red text. Now this is giving me a bit of a headache. I suggest you choose better colors, but this is just to explain to you how it works. Now you can see that green is coming through as the real green, not some sort of green mixed with a bluish color. Okay. Now the final thing to show you is that you can actually use your own files, if you like, as a button. Now I'm going to use my company's logo, for example, as a button. So this is where we come back to background normal and background down. Remember what I said, they are actually string values to the source file of your button. So if in here you stick a value or the path to a PNG or a JPEG or whichever format you have, that will then be your button. So firstly, I'm going to change my padding because my logo is actually a square. So I'm going to comment these two out because I'm going to replace them here. So my background, normal, I want that to be a link to a logo. Okay. So what I want is the button in its normal state to be my logo, and then when I click it, I want it to turn into its default value and show text. If the state is normal state, don't want there to be any text. So if the state equals normal, then I don't want there to be any text, else I want it to say some text for my button. The font size still applies. The font color, I'm going to leave that out for now. So I'm going to switch off background color as well, just so these are all back to their original, and then see what that does. So that gives me my original logo, and if I click it, it will change into a button that says some text for my button. Of course, I didn't spend any time adjusting the font size for the fact that I've made my button smaller, so we can play around with that. Let's see if that fits. There you go. So it's some text for my button. So if I click it, it goes back to its blue default state and it shows text. If I unclick it, it shows me the logo. And why is that? Well, because all I've replaced is the normal background. So that's the normal background color. I've changed that to a picture. And up here, I've said if the state is normal, I don't want to show any text. But if I do click it, then I want to show text for my button. And even with this, you can still play around. You can see this is the original logo. But if I switch the background color filter back on, it will start applying this filter. In the normal state, it will apply a red filter to that image. And then therefore you get a really red kind of thing. So you can keep mixing things up and playing around with things. But I'll leave that to you to discover that a bit more. That's it for now. I hope you found that interesting. See you in the next part of the tutorial. Thanks. Bye.